Hello, you absolute legends. Welcome back to Life on the Ranch. Today on the Shieldborn Ranch, we are going to be making an incredible beef stew. Well, let's begin. Now you need to correct order of operations. First, you want to wash your hands, make sure they're clean. When you got clean hands, get yourself a nice cutting board. Hold it down with something so it doesn't move around on you. You want it to stay firm and in place. Get yourself a nice sharp knife. Then you want to start with your vegetables. Cut those down into decent sizes. You don't want them too big. You want them small enough you can fit on a spoon. Because remember, we're making stew. So we're going to trim down our veggies a little bit here. If you want to follow along and make one on your own at home, well, just do like I do. You can start by chopping your celery. Using about half a bunch. The heart of celery I just used for other things because it's good for other things. I like the outer stalks because they're good for putting in stew. Did you know that different vegetables have different effects on parts of the body? If you look at celery, for example, it's kind of like a bone. Celery is really good for your bones. Then there's carrots. Look inside of the carrot here. You'll notice it kind of looks like an eyeball. Well, carrots are really good for your eyes. Onions, however, they're good to kill off those free radicals that float around in your system, like sucrose and fructose, two different parts of sugar. Potatoes, they kind of look like an oversized blood cell. They're probably good for your blood, good for your kidneys. They kind of look like a kidney too. So then when you're holding a knife, you want to make sure you hold it properly. Finger on one side, thumb on the other side, 3 fingers on the handle. Doing so will make it so your knife always stays exactly where you want it to go. If you hold it like this, you have 0 control over your handle. Over your knife, it could lose a finger. And when you're cutting, curve your fingers. Then when you cut, it should look like that. So you can see the fingers are curved. So the knife and the fingers never really come into contact with each other. Now remember, you can do it all at once, but you have very little control over your veg as you're cutting. So just be smart. Just do a couple of pieces that you can handle. You can get your whole hand around it. And then as you cut, you just move your hand back a little bit. Your fingers help to guide the knife as to how big of pieces you want. And at the end of the day, you end up with nice dice that's all the same size. And don't forget, you probably need something to hold your cut up vegetables in while you're waiting to make the stew. Now for you keen-eyed observers out there, you probably noticed the beef sitting in the background. That'll be the last thing that we cut up. Why is the beef the last thing that we cut up? Well, simple. We don't want to contaminate our cutting board and then have to wash it. As the vegetables don't have any bacteria on them, they're nothing to contaminate. The beef, however, that could have bacteria on it. So then that leaves all that meat residue all over. Then you have to wash your board before you carry on to do your vegetables. If you do your vegetables first, you never have to wash your board until you're all finished when you're cleaning up. So legends be legendary and use the correct order of operations. Veggies first, meat last. Notice they're about, the size of the end of your thumb. It's a nice sized chunk, small enough you can bite it. And then with my carrots, I like to do shaped cuts. Notice how I start with the tip of the knife on the board. If you're doing it properly, your knife should never actually have to leave the cutting board to cut your carrots. You just keep giving them a bit of a third of a turn or so. You end up with nice chunky carrots. And it doesn't matter how fat or thin they are, you can get them all cut to the same size. So you see you got nice shaped carrots. Just throw those under your veggie ball there. They're all going in the stew together at the same time. Personally, I like to take the ends off my carrots first. That way I can just run right through to the end. And no legends, I'm not wasting the ends of the carrots. I'm throwing them into the chicken feed bowl. So those ends that I cut off are going out to feed the chickens. Because chickens are like living composters. They will eat anything. If you can eat it, they can eat it. With the exception of stuff like bones. They don't really eat bones. Because, well, they're chickens and they don't have teeth to grind through the bone. So my legends, if you like videos on all kinds of different things, whether it be feeding the animals or cleaning pens or just making yourself incredible food, because we all got to eat, you might as well learn how to do it right? We might as well make our legendary food, as we are legendary people. And with today's rising food costs, sure, you can go to the store and buy yourself a can of ready-made stew for, you know, what, $3, $4 a can? Or you can make an entire pot, which is about 20 cans worth for the price of about 4 cans. So you could spend about $20 on your raw ingredients, take it home and cook it yourself. Or you can spend the same $20 and get like 3 cans of ready-made stew, and who knows what's in it. And we have our nicely shaped potatoes. I love different shapes in my food. It just gives it a variety of textures. And all I do is just make 3 cuts. I cut it in half, and I cut it on an angle, and I cut it on another angle. So then you get 6 pieces out of it. All the same size, but all nicely shaped. So again, cut it in half, cut it straight across, and you just cut it into thirds, like so, and then third again, like so. At the end, you'll have 3 beautiful triangles. This way you don't end up with all the exact same shapes in your stew. You're not all squares. You know, square potatoes, square celery, square carrots, square onions. That's kind of boring. You're a legend. You might as well have legendary food. Legendary food has shapes. I like to cut my food into shapes because once upon a time, in a past life, I used to be a chef by trade. Now in a new life, I am a rancher by trade. Sometimes you just have to take off the growth. Oh, they're perfectly fine if they do that. They're just starting to come to life. Ideally, I should have a bigger bowl to keep my potatoes in so I can get them into some water. However, there's only going to be a couple of minutes before they're into the stew, so I'm not too worried about them oxidizing and turning colors on me like brown. They're fine if they oxidize a little bit, they're just not as beautiful looking as a nice white potato. Easy there, potato. Trying to slip and slide on me. Now for those healthy onions. Take off those ugly onion skins. You can just stack them on your potatoes, stack them on your carrots, stack them on wherever you have room in a bowl for them. Next, I'll show you a nice little onion dicing trick that I picked up after 10 years in the culinary industry. See, a lot of people say that you should cut your onion in sideways like so. Cut it in, cut it in, cut it in, and then cut it down like so. And then you can dice it. However, I say, why add all the extra steps? The onion's already got all these beautiful layers in it. As you can see, all these lovely layers. So, take your onion, turn it sideways. Now just cut across. Then you'll have all these little strips, right? Then when you go cut it sideways again, cut against those strips. Well, look at what's happening here. That's right, legends. We just got ourselves a dice. And you're thinking, what do you do when you get to this point and you have that little strip left? Simple. Cut it in half, lay it on its side, and then dice it. Bada boom, bada done. Sometimes if your onions are a little old, they just tend to come apart like that. You just work with them individually. You'll get through it. Just take your time, be safe, watch out for your fingers. And remember, legends, if you have a really sharp knife, the onions won't make you cry. It's because you're bruising the onion cells, which releases that chemical that makes your eyes water. It's like, oh man, I don't like that. Of course, my trick is I just put in earplugs and don't listen to the sad stories the onions tell. Those onions always have the saddest stories that bring you to tears. So if you don't listen to their sad stories, it won't bring you to tears. And that's a joke, legends. They don't tell stories, they're onions. I'm running out of dishes, so I'm just going to grab me another one. So I don't really have a lot of room in there for that stuff. So I'm just going to slide this over the edge. Slide my onions right off and into it. Ideally, I should have a dough scraper. It's just a big rectangular shaped metal with a handle on it. You just use that, you can use that, and you can slide it in against your hand. And that'll pick up your onions all diced up, and then you can dump them in the bowl. Bada boom, bada done. Sometimes I just cheat and cut it all the way through in the first go. Does it make it a bit more of a challenge to do it? Yes, yes it does. Another way of cutting onions, if you want to get them all the same length, it's known as a French cut. So you're Frenching them. You want to come in sideways to the onion like this, so the onion's facing that way. Just come along and cut. Keep your knife on an angle, and as you're doing it, you go up. In doing so, you'll end up with onions that are all the same length, but nicely thin. So if you're making like a French onion soup, there's your onions all the same length, so you don't have tiny short pieces and big long pieces, right? You'll have all the same length of pieces, which is ideally what you want, all the same length of pieces. And don't do what I just did with the knife to pick up your diced up foods, because it's a sharp knife and it could slip and cut your hand. And then you'd be in a bad way, legends. In a bad way. Alright, so now I'm going to move my veg out of the way. Because up next, we're going to do our beef. You will want yourself a clean, empty bowl. And you'll take your chunks of stewing beef. You want to clean them up a little bit, get off some of that excess fat. Take off that excess fat. You can see there's very little wasted meat on there. Now remember, legends, if you have a boning knife, use it, because it'll make your job a lot easier. That's exactly what boning knives are there for. You notice here, that is silver skin. That has to come off. I'm finding my boning knife. This, legends, is a boning knife. You notice how the blade's really thin. Compared to your French knife, nice wide thick blade, thin boning knife blade. This will get you into places that you can't otherwise get into. This will do a much nicer job cleaning up your meat for you. Make sure to get all that silver skin off, because it doesn't matter how long you cook silver skin, legends, it'll never break down. It'll just literally never break down. It's tough and fibrous. It's unedible. You know, because I don't want to waste what's above the silver skin, I'm going to trim that off too, because I'm making a stew. Sometimes it can be a little bit tricky to get it, but when you do, it is so worth the while. Oh, this thing feels like it needs to go into the sharpening. That should be cutting that off like a hot knife through warm butter. So for now, we got it cleaned up. I'm just going to set that aside, move on to the next piece. And the next piece, and then the next piece, and then the next piece, and then the next piece. See all that silver skin? That's got to come off. Because you can cook that stuff for 1,000 hours, and it'll still be just as tough as it is when it's raw. It's a lot easier to remove silver skin when it's on a big chunk rather than little chunks like this, but you work with what you got, right? These cows were sourced from Pinocchio Hills Farm up here by the ranch, so they're all local beef. And believe me, they are delicious. Local farmers have them out in their fields, grass feeding them all summer long till they're big enough to sell to this local slaughterhouse up here. So you can see that my beef came within 100 kilometers of me. When you're pulling your silver skin off, you want to have your knife pointed up so you're always dragging along the edge of the skin. That way you're not wasting good beef. This one doesn't really have any silver skin, it's just a bit of excess fat that's got to come off. Let's switch to something just a bit sharper. So now that we got all the excess fats off, we can dispose of them. Into the garbage it goes. These can come back over here because I need the space again in my bowl. So now I'm just going to cut these up into nice chunks. First I cut them into strips. Nice strips. Make sure you keep yourself space on the cutting board, legends. You want to have room to work. And then I just cut them into chunks. Still a nice chunk of fat on there. I'm just going to take that off. Just don't want that much fat in my stew. I like my beef kind of chunky, so I leave it in slightly larger pieces. A little bit bigger than what you could fit on a spoon, but that's alright. Because I like to see the beef that I'm eating, not just imagine that it's in there. You got these little minuscule pieces. Alright legends, now that we're done with the cutting work, I gotta get cleaned up. We'll be right back. Alright legends, so what we need to do next is season our flour. So I got a mortar and pestle here. Has some of my dry herbs, like rosemary. It's like pine needles. So See, they're long, they're hard. Those just aren't fun to eat when they're like that form. So I'll put about a tablespoon and a half of rosemary into the pestle here. And then we'll work our magic. Grab your mortar and pestle. Start grinding. And if you don't have a mortar and pestle at home, well, that's alright. Use your coffee grinder. It does the exact same result. I just like to take the hands-on approach. So when you're done, legends, you should have something nice and fine like that. So you get all that flavor without those big chunks in it. So we're just going to toss that into our bowl. Yes, I know, we previously had our beef in there. That's alright. Beef's going back in there anyway. Normally I would use fresh garlic, but unfortunately I'm all out of that right now. So again, probably want to use about a teaspoon's worth of dry garlic. However, I just love this stuff, so I'll use about 2 tablespoons because I really enjoy garlic. I love it. Can't get enough of it. If I was using fresh, I'd use the whole clove. The whole bulb of garlic, like 7 or 8 cloves. And we also got some thyme. So about a tablespoon of rosemary, a tablespoon of garlic. About a tablespoon of thyme. As you can see, those are really small, so they're nothing to worry about grinding. You can if you want, but you don't have to. I will, just for the sake of consistency, give them just a quick grind. As you can see, it hasn't done a lot, but it broke them down a bit. That's all you need, just a bit. Then dry parsley, fresh if you have it. Parsley is really good for digestion, so about 2 tablespoons. You don't want to go too crazy and have it overwhelm the flavors of everything else, because parsley does have a bit of flavor to it. Alright, so now we're just going to give that a quick toss. Get them kind of mixed up. Discover that I have a few chunks of garlic because it's been exposed to a drop of humidity. And add some flour. Or legends, if you're like me, why get sick when you can get safe? Just grab a fresh, clean plate. Try and get that camera adjusted nicely for you legends to have a great view. So now at this point, our oven's hot. Our oil's nice and hot. Let's get that out of the frame. Just gonna stick our other plate over here so we got it accessible. Got a nice hot oil, and don't overload your pan. Throw just a few pieces in there at a time. What you're trying to do is brown up all the edges of all the meat. If you overload your pan, it's going to drop the temperature, and then it'll take it way too long to cook, and your meat won't brown. It'll just sweat and boil out. Don't be afraid to add a bit of oil in the beginning. This is just nice extra virgin olive oil, cold press. The good stuff. If you listen carefully, you can hear it sizzle, sizzle, sizzling. So you just want to go through and just start to roll it around a bit. Get all those sides nice and browned up. It'll take a few minutes, Legends, but it is worth it in the end because that's what locks the flavor in your meat. So you can see it's got that nice sear on it. Well, Legends, if you like seeing how to make fantastic food for yourself, go ahead and hit that thumbs up. And if you're not already, go ahead and subscribe, because we'd love to make more content like this for legends like you. Sometimes we're making animal videos, sometimes we're making food videos. In the summer, we're planning on building a pizza oven video. So we're actually going to have a nice outdoor pizza oven, and we're going to do some making of pizzas in the summer. It'll be legendary. You'll love it. Anyway, we'll be back when all the meat's fried up. Alright, so we got the next round of meat in. First little bit's been done, it's finished, so it's come out. Just off to the side so we can get the next round going. Because we got to keep her going, Legends, until it's all pushed through. Oh, and Legends, for those of you that can't use flour, substitute a bit of cornstarch. But do it when you go to add everything else. Towards the end, you'll add the cornstarch. You got everything else, you've got it cooking for a while, it's more like a soup. Then the last 20 minutes of its cook time, just dump in a bit of cornstarch and water mix. Work that throughout your stew. That'll thicken it up, so then you can have the gluten-free option and still have the stew. Just cornstarch doesn't have the gluten like flour does.